welcome everyone to another season of Straight from the Paws. Today I have some very special guests with me. I'm going to start with the cutest, and that would be Porter, not you, Casey.
Oh, that's a real letdown.
Porter, yes. And then he's with our administrator, Casey Fredette, in case you don't remember him. And of course, our A.C.O. in Fall River, Supervisor Cindy Berard Cadima. And thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
So today's show, we want to talk to the audience a little bit about it's winter time, what do we do with our pets, and how we take care of them. So we'll start a little bit with that. Well, let me talk to Cindy first. Cindy, you're up to full capacity at Animal Control. So
yes, we finally have a third person.
you have a third person.
Good, yeah.
So you're able to get out there and do what you have to do. Let's remind our audience again that you don't work 24/7. So what are basically your hours and what should they do if there's an emergency, especially with the winter months?
We work from 8 to 4, 7 days a week. We do have somebody on call at night. You have to call the police department, and a sergeant will decide if it's an emergency or not, and they'll send us out. So somebody is always available if there's an emergency. It's just the sergeant's discretion.
So it's not your discretion. Mm-hmm. It's not you. People shouldn't get upset with you.
No.
And people, please understand, because I've met with some neighborhood police officers, and they've mentioned again that what happens is it's a priority as far as what's important. So if there's a robbery going on and there's I hate to say this, but an animal hit by car, the robbery is going to take precedent. And that's just the way it is. And you may not hear about it until several hours later when they're really busy.
Yeah.
So I would really like the public to realize that it's not the A.C.O.'s fault, it's out of their control. And again, it's not the police officer's fault, the sergeant. It's just a priority of what's important that particular minute of the day. I think that's really great.
Thank you.
No, we appreciate that, what you do, because I think people, when we get the calls now, they're saying, well, they don't come out, right, Casey? They're not there for us.
With animal control, especially being the place that collects their animals now, we get to see how active Fall River Animal Control is, because, and I don't know the statistics, but this is a pretty sizable city. And you've got 3 people covering all the animals, especially when you consider not every house will have a pet, but a lot of the buildings are 3-family or even up. You've got miles of essentially apartment complexes, a lot of which do allow pets. So when you break down the number of animals in this city, and the other fun fact that people don't always realize is just because an animal lives in Westport doesn't mean that when it gets to the town line it's going to stop and say, I shouldn't go there. So they're dealing with animals from surrounding towns, cities, their own city. They're dealing with everything from, well, mice, rats, and domestic ones obviously, not wild ones, on up through farm animals in this city. People have them, and plenty of people that shouldn't have them too, which is a lot of times why they get involved. So Cindy, Corinne, and Kate, the 3 animal control officers that we have in the city of Fall River now, they're responding all the time. They, like you say, the priority might be somewhere else, because with emergency response of any kind, you have to triage it. But Cindy's been at the shelter at 9:30 at night. She's been at the shelter in the middle of the night. Her staff has been there in the early hours, long before anyone shows up. They've been there in the dark, and they're there in the rain, the snow. So they're responding to the calls, but definitely need people to be honest, be upfront, be patient, and give them a chance to do their job.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And one of the things I would like people to realize too, that some people say, well, the shelter isn't open 24/7. Of course we're not. I don't know any shelter in anywhere, and I've been to different shelters in different states. We've been to Florida, different places, and they don't open 24/7. They may have a night staff, I don't know, but you do have access to our building. You do have access to all the supplies that you need, and so on and so forth. So that's really important. And you mentioned about a little bit about farm animals. Do we have farms in Fall River?
We have everything in Fall River. That's the problem. We have city, we have country. So tomorrow we're going to go out and do some barn inspections. I mean, we deal with farm animals. We deal with exotic animals. We have snake calls. We have everything. I responded to a fire last year, and I had 8 bearded dragons, and I had to figure out a spot to put them. So we deal with everything in Fall River, which makes the job really fun.
Which makes it interesting for sure.
Yeah.
And fun. And now that we have the contract with you, it's become more fun at our place. We've had some very interesting animals from you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we appreciate it. But you have a good network outside there too, so that helps us as well.
I do have to say, Fall River Animal Control was, in my career going back to 2001, professional animal work, was my first stray quail was from from Fall River Animal Control. We've had New Bedford, which has brought in a lot of interesting things because they have a zoo, they have similar, so the New Bedford contract has always brought in interesting things, and we also, of course, have the Westport contract, which is a lot of more farm animals, breeds of dogs that you associate with a bigger area, seemingly endless availability of stray beagles in the town of Westport, but Fall River seems to have a real knack for finding some very unique animals in very unique situations.
We have a great community. They're not afraid to call things in, and I really appreciate that because they're our eyes. We can't possibly see everything. So when people call with complaints, we respond to everything. So.
Well, that's good to know. I think that's good for our audience to know. Now let's talk about a little dog like Porter. You know, we say, well, we're going to bring an animal on the show and talk about animals being outside in, you know, the cold and all that. Now, someone would say to me, no one would ever let that dog outside by itself. What would you respond to that?
We have dogs like this that sometimes are forced to live outside. So people, different communities, different, what's the word I'm looking for? We just have different types of people living in our city. So
different outlooks and how animals are. You know, some people consider an animal a pet. Others, it's a possession. In other words, it's just, we don't really want it anymore. And then there's those of us that are animal people that consider them part of my family. You know, so there's a big diversity amongst people.
Yes.
And so you would see an animal like that outside.
We do. Some people think they're the best homes. They have them living in cages outside, and they think that's great. And unfortunately, we're only as good as the laws. So as long as that dog has food, water, shelter, I kind of have to let it be unless it's, you know, shivering to death or something, you know, unless it's a cruelty issue. But we have to just make sure it has food, water, shelter. We do have small dogs living outside in our city, and I try to convince people to surrender or to bring them in or even into a basement when it's cold. If the animal is in trouble, I just take it. We charge them with cruelty. We don't mess around with that. We work on blizzards. I mean, that's why we have the Jeep. We work through everything. So honestly, we'll take them if they're in trouble, but if people take care of them, then that's okay, you know.
So it's important for neighbors to know that. Casey brought out a great point. You know, we have our 3-4 tenement apartments and so on. And so I live on the second floor, and the person on the first floor, who happens to be my landlord, has their dog outside, and you come in. So what you've just said is very true. You've come in. It's not like you didn't do anything. You have to go within the parameters of the law. And people don't understand that.
People get really angry, and I agree. I don't think animals should be living outside. My dogs are in my bed with me at night, you know, so I agree what people are saying, but I can't. If that animal is okay, if it's got food, water, shelter, I have to let it be for now, you know, until the laws change, so.
And with animals, it can be very hard. Animals are prone to eliciting a certain amount of emotion, which so often is used in a positive way. But sometimes it can cloud understanding, it can cloud good sense. And of course, especially the animal control officers, especially animal shelters, we're business, we operate, we have a staff, we have obligations to people and animals, and we're all required and expected and mandated to follow the rules and the laws, what Massachusetts allows, what the city allows, what the town allows, what the various governments that we report to allow. And a lot of times that's very difficult for people. They think that it's not a choice, that we're being cruel, that we don't care. That I'm pretty sure I can vouch for having seen all 3 of the Fall River animal control officers shed a tear since July. And each one out of compassion for the animal that they're working on or the situation for the animal they're working on. And a lot of people get very frustrated because as a shelter, as we are able to, as we have space and can safely do so, we'll accept stray cats, stray animals. Massachusetts is very explicitly clear that we cannot accept stray animals from Rhode Island.
Right.
Now, our property borders Rhode Island.
That's really
So
hard.
if you walk far enough into the woods from the shelter's property, you are in Rhode Island. But that it's the law, and we have to follow that, because if we choose not to follow it, if you choose not to follow it, you're not going to be here tomorrow
Right.
to help those animals that are in need tomorrow.
Right.
So it's very difficult. It puts everyone in a very difficult situation, because people see that they're emotional, they're high-strung from the situation of feeling so much emotion, feeling such concern and fear for the animal, that they then see what we have to live within, and they think that we're being lazy, we don't care, we've given up, our compassion's gone. So I think it's important for people to understand how, especially these animal control officers, how human they are and how much they feel.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
No, and I agree with him, and I do. And even with the staff, I know we have our dog play yards outside, and Casey will say to them, they let the bigger dogs, and let them get some fresh air for 10, 15 minutes. And the staff is like, I'm not putting them out there, it's too cold. Well, there are some days, and he's usually on target what the time is and time element. So he knows what the time elements of the animals can be out there. But even our staff, it's like, we can't do that. It's too cold out there. I'm not going out there. And I'm like, yeah, fresh air is good for them. So I think
Definitely.
it's very difficult. But I do agree that if you're in the field, we can all address this. It's not for the money.
No.
We're not doing it for the money. We're doing it for the love of the animals and the compassion of what we care about these people that can't, and be their voices. And I think that's really important, that people have to hear that and understand that. Now, either one of you, I'll field the question to either one of you. Let's talk a little bit about dogs outside, or any animals outside, when we're using rock salts and all that. What do we do? What are we doing right? What can we do wrong? What's going on?
There's definitely pet safe salt that you can use. I would recommend that. Even when I walk my dogs on the street, I sometimes forget, and then all of a sudden they're limping, and it's not good for them, So be careful walking your dogs when they're salting the streets and things. I walk my dogs every night, so I just have to be careful. They wear little booties now, so.
Yeah, then you have a little dog like mine that wouldn't put anything on her. She'd bite me before I get her booties on. So
Maybe don't walk her on the street.
Yeah, well, and we don't. Obviously, don't walk her around the street, but she does like going for walks, and so they do have it. And I will tell tell our audience, it's more expensive. You can get it, Rocky's Ace Hockey on President Avenue. They have a good selection, but it is more money than the regular one. So you got to budget for it. I know people have a hard time with that, but you got to budget ahead of time. And maybe you don't walk your dogs outside if it's really bad weather, and be aware of that. Or when you've done a little bit of a walk, come back in and clean off their paws and make sure they're all set. Make sure the undercoating doesn't have anything on it, so that they're pulling at it and getting something toxic in their own body.
Yep, absolutely.
I brought Porter specifically today because, first of all, he is, as small and cute as he is, he is the quintessential animal control shelter dog. His parents were an animal control case. They were frequently with us as strays, having gotten loose, or their owners in various situations that they couldn't have them. Finally, the parents didn't go back to the owners, and they were put up for adoption. And of course, by the time we gotten them, Porter's mother was pregnant. And so Porter's mother, she went into a foster home. Porter and his siblings were born. Then he came to foster at my house. My son and other children fell in love with him, and they don't let him leave now. So he's really been the front to back animal control shelter dog. But the other thing he's good for is he's about 4 months old, and we talk about the weather, and we're going into it. If you look at Porter here, and you think of a snowbank,
Yeah.
if you think of a blizzard or a nor'easter, we're not going to find this dog in that. And so when you talk about the paws and the rock salt, you might think, oh, it's just a little bit of rock salt, but his paw is the size of a
Yeah.
spoon. So you take a little bit of rock salt and that, or like Cindy here says about the dogs living outside, and of course, certain animals, farm animals, of course, but there are situations, but these little guys, some of these dogs without the fur, and even him with the fur, he's so low to the ground, his fur is just going to wick all the water up.
Yep.
It's going to mat. It's going
Yeah,
to
he's going to get
stay.
cold really fast. Yeah.
He's going to be wet. His health's going to be compromised. So I understand different cultures have different philosophies of life and how they approach various things, including pets. But most every culture that I know of does have a concern and a thought back to money and that what it costs for them to live. And if you're thinking, oh, the dog inside, I'm going to have to shampoo the carpets, that's going to cost. I'm going to have to rent a shampooer, or I'm going to have to put pee pads, or I'm going to have Resolve for when the little 4-month-old puppy pees on our carpet by our television. Well, when the dog gets sick, because it's been outside, its immune system's been compromised, its health in general has been compromised, there's a cost right there. Yeah. When it's eating twice what it normally eat because it's freezing and it's burning all of its calories, just shivering, just existing, it's burning more than the calories it's taking in, there's an extra cost. Yeah. So everything, so much is a perspective, but if you just can treat the animals appropriately, think it through, and even though it might be slightly inconvenient in the moment, in the long run, it's going to be better for them. And these silly little guys will love you no matter what, even if you're a tall, sarcastic person that claims that the dog isn't his and refuses to acknowledge and take ownership of it, even though his family has. The dog's still going to love you. So,
and a good thing to remember too is we want to be a service to people. So a lot of people donate crates to us. We can help you with crates. We can help you with food. We can help you with things. So we don't want to go in and be the bad guy and you need to bring this dog inside. You need to do this. We want to help you to work with your dog and get him inside. So people should know that we're a resource. We have things that we can help people with. You just have to ask.
And we all network together too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We all network together about the food and the crates, and sometimes we get donation of crates too, so that if people need something, that we're willing to help out as well. That's a big concern. Let's talk about, I know you do a lot of work with feral cats, and it's winter time again. Let's talk a little bit about that, colonies and stuff. You got any words of wisdom for the people out there?
The feral cats, people think they're your pet cat that's in the house. Feral cats are wild animals. They've always lived outside most of the time. All of them have lived outside. They don't need to come inside. Just keep them warm. Make them nice little shelters. You can put straw in the shelters to keep them warm, but they don't need to be brought inside. We're getting, this morning I think we had 5 calls. I've been feeding these cats and they need to come in because it's cold today. No, they've built up their fur. They're used to it. It's different if it's a dumped cat, a cat that's been left outside by somebody. That's different. But these feral cats that were born outside, they don't know any different. They're not happy to come inside. They're afraid to come inside. So just make sure they have fresh water, make sure they have food, and just a nice shelter. You can build them a nice shelter outside if you want to do that. But they're usually fine. They're like the squirrels. They're fine. So,
they do okay outside.
Yeah, they do fine outside.
And I'm a big proponent, when you call the shelter, of calling animal control, especially when it comes to the cats, because you may have a cat that was semi-feral that you took in.
Right.
It was born feral, but then it was brought in, it kind of got used to indoor living, it goes in and out of your house, or who knows what situation. And your neighbor gets back from Paris and thinks, oh no, there's this cat, picks it up, brings it to the shelter, and now your cat that you provide veterinary care for, you have a hut, you have a garage that you leave cracked open, a basement that whatever the case is, and that person is essentially stealing your pet.
You're right.
And so I refer a lot back to animal control, because when they can and as they have the time, of course, but they have the ability to go out, they have the ability to try and make the determination, is this a dumped cat? Did someone just move out? recently nearby. Is it a feral cat? It's got an ear tip. It's clearly been trapped, neutered, returned back to where it came from with vaccines. It's lived a life outside. It should be outside. So they're pretty expert at being able to figure out whether it's a cat in need or a cat that is cared for and is where it belongs. Because we don't want to be in the business of accidentally stealing people's pets.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We just had a gentleman come in, I won't say what town it was in, but he just came to the shelter because, as we know, Casey was away, and I had to be there, and the gentleman came in. He was very upset. He had 2 cats that were sort of semi-feral that he got to know, and he took care of all the medication and all this, and then I guess someone came to live with him, family member, whatever, totally allergic. He could not keep the cats. He was very upset. No one would help him. No one would take the cats. And he was at his wit's end. He was sort of telling the story to one of our staff people, and I could see by the look on her face, she was like, what do I do now? She gave him all the information she could possibly give him. So I kind of interjected, and I just said, you know, sir, I heard what you said, and I'm really sorry that you've put all this money and time into this animal. But I don't know how we can help you. We have a list, you know, if you want to come in. But he said, I got to get rid of him today. You don't understand. I think maybe someone came home from college, and it just was one of those situations. And the guy was pretty upset. You know, he really was. He had done everything, and he said to me, I'm just going to let him outside. And I said, you know, that's the worst possible thing you can do. And I was able to talk him down. And what I did do is I gave him a couple of other names of groups. Like I said, we network. And I gave him another couple of names of groups. And he said to me, and I felt pretty good about it. He said to me, you know, he said, you're the first group place that I've been. He said, I've been all over the area. He said, and that actually listened and is giving me some sound advice. He said, because no one else wanted to hear it. You know, I think his wife or girlfriend felt very bad about having taking the animal in. It was her cat. She was now upset. And it was a big mess. So sometimes just listening and hearing what they're saying, and I don't know how he made out, but it really made me feel good. And the staff person said to me, I'm glad you're here. And I was like, yeah, that was a tough one. Because he first came in, he was, you know, angry.
They're emotional.
And he was emotional, he was legitimate. And then by the end, he was almost like, we talked about having a couple of tears in his eyes, and he's like, I'm really sorry I was such a, and I won't say the word he used. And he said, you know, but you know, it hurts me that I have to do this. And no one wanted to hear that. No. And I said, well, I'm really sorry about it. This is what we can do for you. And he was happy.
Yeah, that's great. That's just listen to people.
But sometimes just listening and neighbors, you know, listen to your neighbors. Sometimes they just may need a little extra, you know, maybe a couple extra bucks to help them get through that week when they didn't have the food and they're letting the cat out or whatever, or they can't afford to feed the feral cat. Maybe you could help out. Yeah. You know, there's different ways of helping our community and our neighbors, and I think that's really important. I think it's very, very important.
We do too. People are quick to judge, and there's always a backstory. There's always something else going on. So.
Right. And I want to just mention too that we try to work with Fall River community now, especially we did always in the past, but I don't think people believe me when I said that because they would like, you don't have the contract, you don't care. We do care. We care about animals. I don't care if they come, like you said, across the town line. You know, we do care if it's Rhode Island, obviously because it's a law, we have to. There's a certain, people get angry with us, but you still have to figure that out, you know. But we do that, and right now we have that group, and just give us a little synopsis. How's the group doing that comes in and reads to the cats?
Oh, that's awesome.
We have a school that's local, and they come in, I believe, once a month.
Yep.
They come in on the day that we're closed to the public so that they're able to do it quietly and peacefully. And the kids come in on a bus. They bring books that, as I understand it, they've picked. Recently, one of the kids was reading to our adult cats all about chickens.
That's really cool.
It was a book about chickens and chicken care. So hopefully our cats are a little bit more knowledgeable about chicken care now.
That's awesome.
But it really is a great program because we've discussed it a lot on this program and in real life. And the shelter, we do the best that we can. We have community rooms. They can go inside, outside. They have giant catios, as they're called, and the dogs. They have their play yards and all of that. But an animal shelter, an emergency shelter for a human or an animal, is meant to be temporary, meant to be transient. It's not a permanent solution. So a lot of what we do for cleanliness and for their health is set up in a temporary way. So things of home, of human interaction, of consistency like these kids, it can be a big deal to the animals for a human to sit down, and these are animals that are used to people, to sit down and just read to them and spend time with them and interact with them as opposed to the general public and the general rush of people come through. They interact, but they're trying to find a match, and this is not people that are in a rush. It's people, it's kids. They're fun, they're young, they're happy, they're really excited to be there, and they read to them.
Yeah,
And
I
it,
think
gives, it does a lot
that's
for
awesome.
both.
I think that's really cool.
It's an awesome program. We're very pleased. We work with the community a lot. You know, we do some mentoring programs and things like that. So I'm very, happy, and I was really excited when the teacher came in and talked about it. And I didn't know how Mr. Casey would feel about it, but he actually, he said, "Yeah, I think that's a great idea." I was like, "Really? Wow, that's amazing." So we sort of, worked with, and the kids. I've observed the kids in there reading, and and some of them are just petting the cats as the other kids reading. It's just, wow, awesome. So I think we have a lot of good things going on in the, the fall, and I mean, coming up since the fall, and since you've joined us, we've had some new programs going on, and continues to do so. And Cindy mentioned before that they're going to be going out tomorrow, and she's going to take Casey along with her. I told her, maybe not the best decision she's made in her life, but you better. I told him he has to behave. Not get any, don't pick up any more animals that we don't need. We recently have a pig that's finally got a home, thank God. It took a while. Of course, it just happened to be we got the pig when Casey was going on vacation. So I've been trying to network with people, but we do have someone now for our pig. And, we've had a snake, and we have all different kind of animals now. It's very exciting at the shelter. You never know when you're going to walk in, what's going to be there. Sometimes he does give me a heads up and send me a picture, and I'm grateful to that. But I want to let people know, we've only got a few minutes left, that Casey came up with the idea. Casey, you want to share about your pig portraits, paintings?
Oh, yes. So we recently took in, as Gail said, a stray pig that was from a city. He was stray. His name is Kevin Bacon now, and he is a bit of a ham. And so what we did is we had Kevin Bacon sit down and use his snout and his hooves, and he made some paintings that we're going to have
That's
in
really cool.
some of our auctions and up for donations, and they're abstract pieces for sure.
Yes, they are. But he did a very good job.
That was a great idea,
Yeah.
though. I think that's really fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We're excited about it. So, I don't know, did you take pictures of him doing it?
Yes, and
Good.
we'll have those on
Awesome.
our Facebook, which you should be following, Forever Paws Animal Shelter. Lots of fun stories, happy stories of adoption and what's going on at our shelter.
And if you're interested in about adopting or becoming a foster parent or anything like that, give a call to the shelter, give a shout out, because we're always looking for people to do things, different ideas and motivational, anything going on. We really appreciate it. We want to, tell you, Cindy, that we've really enjoyed working with you. I can't believe it, that it's already been several months already. It's been a wonderful experience.
For us, too.
We look forward to a little bit more stuff going on and some new adventures in our life, because we like adventure. We like the stimulation of everything happening. So
It's been great on our end. Honestly, you guys have been incredible, so we appreciate it.
It's been a great situation. I think it's made it easier for people within the city to get their pets, and it's allowed us to continue in the mission of being good neighbors and serving the community we're in and the communities that surround us.
Well, thank you both for coming, and especially thank you, Porter, for joining us and being such a good little guy and not saying a word. Look at that. He's a really great kid, and we do know that he's really a Fredette, but no one wants to admit to that, so we'll just accept that. And thank you again, and another message straight from the Paws.